For the sake of time, I think that we should go ahead and get things started. Thank you for joining us today. You may or may not have met Christine and I when we were out at the office earlier this year. But what I wanted to do is just welcome you and give a brief introduction. Christine is going to be presenting today, and I'd like to just give a little bit of her background. Dr. Christine Keisinger is Vice President of Development and lead trainer of Conscious Communications and Emotional Intelligence for Studio B. In addition to help create our signature series, Christine creates and delivers advanced professional enhancement courses in the areas of interpersonal communication, conflict management, innovative leadership, group and team dynamics, and stress management. What I'd also like to add to that is within the past 6 months, we've recognized the need for additional coursework. We do have courses that are designed to help people through the many transitions that COVID-19 has placed on us. We've also designed some leadership series workshops. So today, Christine is going to talk to you about stress and how it shows up. And what we like to unfold for everybody is that it's here. We're all going through it, but we'd also like to provide you over the course of the month with some practices. And I had mentioned a few minutes ago that everybody should have received an email with login instructions to the Studio B portal. So on the Studio B portal, you are going to find a library of both yoga movement practices as well as guided meditations. So there are going to be additional resources available to you on that portal. I also mentioned that all of our virtual workshops that we're presenting to you live are recorded, and you can find those on the portal as well. So today we're going to be meeting for an hour, but the following 3 weeks are going to be shorter sessions. These are our mini sessions between 20 and 30 minutes. They're very experiential. You'll be, guided through many practices with our instructors, and you can also find those in a recorded version on the portal. So for now, welcome, and I would like to turn it over to Christine.
I'm so glad to be here. We've got what looks like a pretty small group, so this is your hour, and I really want to invite you, if there's anything that I'm saying that you want to know more about, or you have a comment or something really resonates with you, just unmute yourself and just come in to the space with me. Or you can chat. Gretchen's going to keep track of the chat function, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. Several of us were at your site. I looked it up in my calendar before I came on today, on March 3rd of this year. And it seems like 100 years ago. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that happens when we are experiencing extreme levels of stress is weird things begin to happen with our perception of time. So if you're thinking to yourself, oh, it seems like just yesterday I was at Alpha Biocom, and simultaneously it seems as if it was 100 years ago, that's part of stress at work in our cognitive abilities. So we're in it. It is here. So I want to use this session to talk with you really about the unique quality of stress as it occurs during times of crisis and transition, and then to offer you 2 practices during our hour together today that are very simple. You can come into them anytime, almost anywhere, and really proactively aim to sort of shift yourself out of stress response. So again, stop me at any time. I'm going to bring my slides up. I'll be toggling back and forth between the slides and being with you. But really today's presentation is about how it is that we meet stress mindfully. And we're very intentional about the word meet. We try to avoid the word manage, because managing stress implies that we have to work at it, that we're going to grapple with it, that we somehow have to wrangle with it. Meeting is more realistic, and it's also a softer, gentler term. And it's more realistic because here's what I know about life. Pre-COVID and now, when I wake up in the morning, I know inevitably that there are going to be certain stressors that are going to move in and out of my life on that day. And really the question for me is, how am I going to meet the inevitable as opposed to manage or wrangle with the inevitable? How am I going to meet it? Do I have tools and strategies that I can sort of carry around inside of me, that I can call upon, inner resources that are skillful, that can help me to meet the stress that I'm going to face in any given day with a certain sense of ease and grace and a certain sense of confidence that these tools and strategies actually work? But before we launch into the nature of the stress that we have been feeling, I want to share with you a secret. This is a secret that I'm very aware of and that I don't share very often. And that secret is that some of our stress is incredibly positive. And I can say in my own life, over the course of the last 6 months, the stress that I've been grappling with, because sometimes it does feel like I'm grappling with it because it's been so outrageous, has really lit a fire under my butt. I have done things over the course of the last 6 months that probably would have taken me 3 years to accomplish. So stress can be positive in nature. Sometimes it's important to make a distinction between the signs and the sensations of anxiety as we feel them in the body and excitement, because they're almost identical. And I really got clear with myself about this many, many years ago when I was experiencing what I thought was profound anxiety related to public speaking. And when I reframed it and asked myself, are you anxious or are you excited? Everything changed. The physical sensations are almost identical. So when you think about the last 6 months, sort of the gifts that are inherently part of the challenges that we've faced, the ways in which perhaps the last 6 months and the stress that has accompanied the last 6 months has actually fueled you and motivated you to perhaps make changes in your personal life, in your relational life, in your family life, to make changes in who you are as a working professional. Perhaps it's changed the way you show up for your work. Perhaps it's changed the nature of the work that you're doing. For many of us, this global pandemic paired with a really heated political environment has fueled and motivated us to take a lot of very intentional and purposeful action. I can speak for myself when I say that I have fast-tracked personal areas of my life, professional areas of my life that I likely would not have gotten on the fast track to had I not been in the midst of monumental change and transition. So it helps every once in a while to just take a moment and ask yourself, what have I accomplished over the course of the last 6 months that are directly related to the crisis and transition that we wake up to every day? What's really different about the crisis that we're facing now is that there isn't any set endpoint. We don't know when it's going to end. Many people talk about the desire for things to go back to normal. I don't even know at this point that that's possible. In the face of it not being possible, what then are the possibilities moving forward? So I just want to take a moment and ask you to sort of acknowledge what the last 6 months have been like. All the ways you've had to pivot, all the ways you've had to change, at all levels of your being, and to know that the stress was likely a catalyst for those positive changes. So not all stress is bad. There is acute stress, and acute stress tends to be very situational and very time-bound, meaning something big happens. It is inherently stressful. I know I need to deal with it. I know I need to make important decisions. I put one foot in front of the other, and I know that this is short-lived. Most of us have what is called the surge capacity. We have the inner resources to manage the surge of energy that is needed to navigate acute stress. But there's an end point to it. And then there is chronic stress, which is where most of us find ourselves. We find ourselves having landed in the land of chronic stress. And chronic stress occurs when the threat or the threats are ongoing. So, what are the threats that we're all facing? We can all name them, we can all point to them very easily, but they're worth mentioning here for a really important reason, because they reveal something really important about who we are as human beings and what really matters to us and what we really value. So, these are some of the big threats that have caused a whiplash of sorts. You know, many of us feeling this sense of groundlessness, like the world is spinning. The threat to our physical health and the physical health of people that we love and care about. The threat to family and our relationships. The threat to education. So many of us who have children or children in our lives that we care about are watching families navigate this really crazy terrain of education, not only K through 12 or even pre-K through 12, but all of the ways in which university life has changed and feels really temporary because things could change in a moment. For many of us, our financial well-being has been threatened for certain. Our professional stability. What does our professional workplace look like? Are we working from home? Do I have a job? Will I have a job? Is my organization changing in a way where I'm still necessary? Lots of threats to professional stability. Has my role changed? Am I being asked to do things that are different from what I was doing 6 months ago? And of course, threat to our national and global security. So the threats to our physical health are obvious, right? The threats to family and relationships, many of us are conducting our family life in different ways, conducting our relational life in different ways. When we talk about relationships, I have a number of coaching clients who are single, who are navigating the world of dating in a world of social distancing. So Match.com is a very different place, for example, relationally in terms of how people are meeting. And several people I know have really interesting stories about that. You know, getting to know someone virtually that I can't meet in person because of social distancing, changing the way that courtship evolves, changing the way that we navigate the progression of a relationship, sustaining close relationships, marriages, partnerships. Perhaps you haven't been able to see certain people that you love and care about in a long time. And of course, the nature of family life really changing. We have families that have been living together now 24/7 for 6 months. And never in the entire life of their family have they spent so much time together. So lots of stressors in these key areas of life. So here's what I want you to know, and this is why this is important. So our physical health is always important to us. Connection is always important to us. Education, growth, learning important to almost all human beings. Money, critical to the way that we live. Professional stability, critical to the way that we live. National and global security, critical to our human need for safety. So what I want to point out to you here is that this occurred to me as I was looking at the slide a few minutes before our work together today. These 6 threats here, these 6 areas of our life that are threatened, point to 6 fundamental human needs that I can order right now. Our top human need is the need to feel safe, that our bodies, our families, our work, our country, our planet is safe. We have a need to know that we will live, if at all possible, long, healthy lives. Lives with minimal physical suffering. We have a strong need for connection. We have a strong need to feel financially well. We need to name that. Because when our financial well-being is threatened, we really feel it. We all have a human need to grow through learning and education. This is one of the reasons why people are so upset and triggered and charged right now about what's happening educationally. And we all have a need to do work in the world that feels purposeful. So these things on the slide here that are threatened right now, they're all threatened for so many of us, which is why our stress level is so high. When our human need for safety, longevity, connection, financial well-being, growth, and life purpose are threatened, we can be in shambles. So it's quite serious what's going on right now. I would be remiss if I did not mention this, because on top of everything else, there are losses that so many of us are experiencing that we might not even name as loss. And what we know about loss is it's inherently stressful. So there's lots of defined losses that people are experiencing or have experienced. People have lost their lives, and we might not know someone personally who's lost their life, but we only need to turn the television on and look at the numbers every day. We feel this. Again, we may have lost our job, or our job may have changed. Losing your role, doing something different in your organization can be experienced as a loss. So losses abound, and loss is stressful. Then there's what we call limbo loss. What we know about limbo loss is that it's almost more stressful than all of the other losses listed here, because limbo loss occurs when I'm not quite sure if I've lost or not. About 2 weeks ago, I had a very serious respiratory infection that was paired with a terrible cough and a raging fever. So, of course, first thing my doctor did, she sent me for a COVID test on a Friday. And unfortunately, I had to wait all weekend to get the test results. Limbo loss. I just lived this. Limbo loss is, do I have it or not? And if I have it, what am I going to lose? I might lose some work. I might lose aspects of my health. I might lose the capacity to freely go visit my parents, or all kinds of things. So a limbo loss occurs when, for example, you go have blood work done and you're not quite sure what the results are going to be. Limbo loss is your partner looks at you and says, I feel like we need to separate. And you don't know if the relationship is going to end or not. Limbo loss is we're not sure if this organization could withstand another shutdown. Not quite knowing if you've lost or not. Anticipatory loss is, I know I'm going to lose. It just hasn't happened yet. We were told that the organization is going to shut down in 3 months. So we know it's happening and we begin the preparation for it. So the grieving actually begins at the moment that I know there will be a loss, but we haven't actually gotten to that place yet. And then the final loss here on the screen is probably the one that's been the most surprising for so many people over the course of the last 6 months. And that is the loss of a lot of dreams that we had about what life was supposed to look like over the last 6 months. For example, all of our high school students, graduating seniors, didn't get to experience their high school graduation or experienced it in a radically different way. Parents and caregivers grieving that. All of the weddings that had to be canceled or postponed. The vacations that couldn't be had. Just this general sense that I never imagined my life was going to look this way. These are losses. So when someone says to me, wow, 6 months in, I kind of feel like I'm getting the hang of all this change and transition, but I just don't quite yet feel myself. One of the questions I'll often ask is about loss. And that's often the missing piece of the puzzle. When someone says, I feel like I'm sort of meeting the stress of all this pretty well, but I still don't quite feel right. I'll say, look at the loss. What losses have you experienced? And I guarantee you that for those of you who are here listening, or for those of you who might watch the recording, you've experienced many of these. Never underestimate the kind of stress that's associated with loss. And if in your organization you manage or you have team members and you're thinking, he or she just isn't showing up quite right. What's going on? You might want to talk about loss. Okay. So we all bear what I call a stress signature. My stress expresses itself in a very predictable way. My stress signature is unique to me as my own physical signature, or as unique to me as my own thumbprint. Although stress symptoms and expressions of stress, we could sort of lump into one big category. Generally speaking, each of us experiences stress and then expresses it in our own unique way. So I want you to start thinking about that, but also thinking about this idea that stress expresses itself in a unique way during crisis. So in terms of the physical body, here are some of the unique symptoms of stress. You might be noticing it in your sleep. Insomnia, or what I'm hearing a lot, myself included, I get to sleep, but I might wake up at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning in a complete panic, unprovoked by anything conscious, so disrupted sleep. Some individuals are reporting that they have become dream machines, that they are dreaming up a storm, remembering their dreams, and the dreams are very vivid, very wild, really, really memorable. That is a manifestation of stress. There's nothing wrong with it. It's actually one of the ways that the mind cognitively unloads some stuff. Some of us may be noticing changes in the way that we're eating or appetite, overeating, undereating, or going back and forth. I can, again, speak for myself. I have had moments during this crisis where I've been overeating, and moments where my stress level can get so acute that I have no appetite, and extreme exhaustion. I mean, over the top. You lay down perhaps to take a 10-minute nap on the weekend and you're waking up 2 hours later. Or you do get your 6 to 8 hours of sleep and you wake up and you think, where did the night go? Because I don't feel rested. Cognitively, many individuals are reporting intense levels of brain fog. Remembering that brain fog is beyond general forgetfulness. Brain fog is, where are my sunglasses? I'm searching all over the house for the sunglasses and they're on top of my head. Or where's my cell phone? And it's in my back pocket. Or where are the car keys? And they're in my hand. Okay? Intrusive thinking is out of the blue, you're just struck with, what if such and such happens? Tends to be catastrophic in nature. We call it catastrophic thinking. We have no evidence that that's going to happen, but it can intrude upon us when we're busy at work, when we're trying to make an important decision. Intrusive thinking, a version of it, a lighter version of it, is that rotten song that's on replay in your mind, and you're thinking, why am I hearing this over and over again? It's been with me all day. That's intrusive thinking, brought on by stress. Fear-based or rash decision-making, not using our frontal cortex to make informed decisions. A good example of fear-based rash decision-making that comes from the amygdala, the stress area of the brain, was the excessive purchasing of toilet paper 6 months ago. We were not using our executive function to make that kind of decision. That rash buying, I'm guilty of it, came from fear response. Lack of clear access to all areas of the brain. I want access to all areas of my brain to do my best work. I need access to the hippocampus, because if I'm making a decision or I need to pivot, I need to have access to my memories, to previous experiences that will inform the decision I'm making. I need to have access to this prefrontal cortex, what I call the executive suite of my brain. I need to have access to the right side of my brain where creativity lives, especially if I need to innovate or come up with ways to think out of the box so that we can live differently. Stress response, when it's present and it's loud and you feel like you're in fight, flight, freeze, it's almost as if the door is closed to the hippocampus, to the prefrontal cortex, to the right side of the brain. You can't get there. And we need full capacity. We need to be able to make informed, creative decisions. We need the full functioning of our brains. We might be noticing heightened levels of anxiety and depression, or both, or you wake up and you feel great and by noon you feel like you're in a very blue state, or you woke up in a blue state and at noon you're in a highly charged anxious state and by 4 o'clock you feel great. I mean, just really erratic emotion, easily irritated, agitated, highly reactive, or just not feeling myself. These are some of the unique ways that stress will express during crisis. All this stress and the way it spills over into our close relationships is an entirely different webinar. It can, it does, and it can be really erosive. So if you notice some difficulties, relationally speaking, it's not a surprise. It's to be expected. And then, of course, in the realm of our professional work, with all this going on, many of us may not feel as energized for our work, as engaged in our work and each other, or as effective. So this is a lot. I really want to take a moment to introduce you to a model that you can utilize that can put you into touch with the kinds of things that really trigger you. We are ripe for triggering right now, and we have been for the last 6 months, but this model, which I've worked with for many, many years, has never mattered more to me. It's called the SCARF model, and it works with the acronym SCARF. And it was created by Dr. David Rock, who's a neuroscientist who really is interested in applying his findings to leadership, workplace culture, and initially, the SCARF acronym came out of his work where he was very fascinated with what makes people motivated towards whatever it is that they need to do to accomplish at high levels, and motivated to ignore or avoid certain situations because, you know, it would take them in the wrong direction. But the SCARF model gets us very up close and personal, again, with basic fundamental human needs that almost everyone on the planet needs. And man, when these things get threatened, we have a high capacity to go ballistic, to get really reactive and triggered, to get really scared, to get very stressed. We already talked about safety, the S of SCARF, safety. I want to know that I'm physically safe, emotionally safe, relationally safe, professionally safe. And when my own personal safety and the safety of my family and loved ones is threatened, high capacity for stress response to be very high. As human beings, most of us thrive in atmospheres where certainty is high. Now, we all desire this to different degrees, but we know that human beings tend to thrive in structure, routine, a sense of predictability. Certainty went out the window 6 months ago. It's one of the reasons why we're seeing high degrees of anxiety, not just in us. Watch for this in children. I'm watching this play out in the lives of my niece and nephew, ages 9 and 11. Sort of like the forgotten ones. They worry about the safety of their grandparents. They have no certainty as they're sitting at their laptops in their home trying to figure out Google Classroom. Okay? Autonomy. All human beings thrive when they have permission to be independent, to make autonomous decisions, when they know that their leaders and managers believe in them enough to say, you know what, you decide, I trust you. Autonomy, that I can get in my car and I can go where I please without restriction. That's been compromised. Really important for leaders, managers to know. Keep this in mind, that your staff team employees are highly motivated when they believe that you believe and trust in them enough to make good decisions on behalf of the company. Try to preserve autonomy even during a really chaotic time. If you have children or you're around children, especially teens right now, that are really unreasonable and really erratic emotionally, this is a time in their life where independence matters so much, and yet they're sequestered to home. Or have been now for many months. What's that doing to the natural need and desire of teens to really express and live independence and autonomy? Human need for relationship. We do not function well. It is damaging to our health and well-being if we are absent close, deep, meaningful relationships. You know this. Whenever one of your most important relationships is under threat, high level of stress, it affects every level of our being. And then the F of SCARF has to do with fairness. And when we think about fairness, we want to think about, am I being treated fairly? Am I being treated with the dignity and respect that I deserve? when you look back at times in your life, even if you were to look back at the last time you felt really angry, were you triggered into your anger because there was some part of you that believed an injustice is being done upon me, or I'm not being treated fairly with dignity, respect? We'll get really stressed about that. We can get really triggered if we believe that we're being treated unfairly. And this has really been present over the course of the last several months. You know, my niece and nephew, as an example, this life is not fair, that we can't go back to school and be with our friends, or that we missed my son's high school graduation, or that I had to cancel my wedding, or that I lost my job. It doesn't feel fair. SCARF. These are fundamental human needs that we value and we cherish and we will fight for. And when they're under threat, we get stressed. So the next time you're feeling really triggered, the surge of stress coursing through your bloodstream, ask yourself quickly, in what way are any of the letters of SCARF getting triggered right now? It really helps you to create a kind of self-awareness that wouldn't be possible otherwise. And I love SCARF because it helps me to understand people who in my present are becoming dismantled or might be really angry or triggered, and I'm the recipient of it. I have such compassion when that's coming in my direction, and I can say to myself, okay, you know what? This teenager right now, this is hard. This is really taxing on her need for autonomy. Or, wow, this is really taxing on my partner's need for certainty, because nothing feels certain right now. And when I can have a better read, I can't always entirely know for sure, but when I can have some sort of insight into what's fueling high stress response and triggering, I do a much better job at then being really responsive in the moment, as opposed to going back at that person with the same level of reactivity and triggering, because that is what we do as human beings. It's sort of our default. If the energy of anger or reactivity is coming in my direction, my default is to meet up with it with the same kind of reactive energy. But I don't have to do that, because I always have the power to choose. I always have the power to choose what my response is going to be, but I can only have that when I have an understanding of what's going on in the first place. And this is really why the first half of this session is devoted to really putting out on the table in very clear terms what the stress is about, how it's showing up a little bit differently, because we are in a crisis that is not bound by time and is replete with uncertainties. And I also wanted to share SCARF with you so that you can develop some self-awareness around what's scaring me right now. I had this experience just last night. It hasn't happened to me in probably 6 or 7 weeks, but I did have the experience of waking up in the middle of the night in a lather of sweat and in a complete panic. And one of the first things that I did was I moved myself through SCARF. What's happening here right now? Is there something you're afraid of? Is there something your anxiety is fueled by, something you feel uncertain about? Is this about your autonomy? Is this about a relationship, the connection? Is this about the F? And you know what? It may have been about all 5 of those things. So if it's about more than one, and sometimes all five, you can get a very high level of stress present within yourself and those around you. And I would suggest that a global pandemic paired with lots of civil unrest, paired with global fires, for example, on the West Coast. My son is in Boulder in school. I was looking at the map. Boulder has fires on both sides and massive snowfall. Lots of strange things happening with the weather. If you saw photographs of the sky in California yesterday and probably today, it's bright orange. It looks apocalyptic. So that's lurking in the background as well. And a highly charged and heated political climate. This is a lot. So it wouldn't be shocking to me at all if all 5 letters of the acronym right now feel really unsafe. And that explains to me, or helps me to understand, why it is that I woke up in the middle of the night in that state. So, mindfulness is about far more than being in a seated position on a fancy cushion in a state of meditation. Mindfulness is awareness that I don't really like what's happening right now. Mindfulness is awareness that all 5 letters of SCARF right now are really threatened for me. Mindfulness is the awareness that I feel really triggered. Mindfulness is the awareness that all these things can be happening. I might not like what's happening, but the one thing I have control over is the choice that I get to make as to how I'm going to handle it. Really quickly, before we go into practice, I'm actually going to pair 2 practices here at the end. So, generally speaking, when 1 or more or all 5 of the letters of SCAR feel really threatened, and I'm on the precipice of really coming into stress response, there are 3 aspects of the neurological system that can take over. The first one here on the slide is the one that we're most familiar with, and that is stress response. So I go into that state of fight, flight, freeze, right? I'm going to fight this. I'm going to resist this. I don't want this. Maybe I need to physically fight. Maybe I'm going to fight verbally with my words. That's fight. Flee. I don't like this. I'm out of here. I'm leaving. I can't leave the house because of social distancing. And so I'm going to leave by just becoming completely unpresent to you. Freeze. In the moment of great stress and anxiety, we can completely shut down. Become very withdrawn. Not even having the capacity to put words together. Stress response. Usually moderated by the presence, high levels of cortisol and adrenaline, both so necessary when we are in a true emergency and we need to act fast. Because when I need to fight and I need to run and I need to freeze and shut down to stay alive, I want the cortisol and the adrenaline. But I don't want it or need it in my system 24/7. It will drain me, it will deplete me, it will make me sick. Another manifestation of stress response is what we call the pleasure-reward response. And that's usually moderated by excessive amounts of dopamine. And this is, stress is here. I don't like how this feels. I'm having those sensations of agitation or anxiety or nervousness, and I don't like how this feels, so I'm going to actively seek out something to make me feel different. And maybe it's a pint of ice cream, and maybe it is binging on a Netflix series till 3 o'clock in the morning, even though I need to show up for work at 7:30. whatever it is that gives you that temporary sense of pleasure. It's the things that we choose that make us feel like temporarily we have a warm blanket around us. I am safe. I am comfortably numb. We all do this. We all do both of these things, by the way. Stress response takes over, pleasure reward takes over. You know, scrolling mindlessly through social media is lots of dopamine getting generated in that. It's soothing for us. Actually, the act of the scrolling is very soothing for us, but it's temporary. That dopamine drops off quickly, and then I'm back to where I started, stressed again. Depletes, drains the system over time, will make us sick. So again, I want to really emphasize, we do this, I do these things. But I want to do something different. I want to choose what my response is going to be. I want to choose how I'm going to meet these moments of stress. So I want to tend. We call this the tend response. This comes out of the work of Dr. Shelley Taylor at UC Berkeley. She actually calls it the tend and befriend response. And that this is what it looks like. Again, I notice stress is present. Perhaps all the letters of the acronym are activated. I'm ready to lose it. Stress is high. And I say, whoa, wait a minute. I don't want to run, fight, shut down. I don't want to be in the refrigerator, pleasure reward. I'm going to tend to this. This is here. I feel it as Gretchen opened. It's here. But I'm going to tend to it like I would tend to the wound of a child who's learning how to ride a bike for the first time and has just fallen. And her knee is busted open. And I'm the adult watching. And I don't fight her, and I don't run from her, and I don't freeze and shut down, and I'm not running to the refrigerator for ice cream. I'm running to her. I get down on my knees. I put my arms around her, and I tend to the wound, to the pain, to the suffering, and I connect to her. And that's when we start to generate truly and realistically the flow of oxytocin, another neurohormone that works similarly to dopamine. It feels warm and protective and safe, and it doesn't drain the system. It's only good for us. Oxytocin is a hormone that's running strongest in a human embrace that's deep and lengthy and meaningful. It's why we love to wrap ourselves up in the arms of another person. Oxytocin is known affectionately as the cuddle hormone. This is the hormone that runs strongest in the bodies of two people who are in that stage of falling in love. So we were sort of observing them from across the room thinking, oh, Lord, look at those two. It's all hormone. Lots of oxytocin happening there. Oxytocin is flowing when you hold your pet close, or you're holding a child close, mostly to this part of the body, the center of the chest. Oxytocin nourishes the system. It helps to repair the central nervous system that's been battered by stress. It calms us down. It takes us out of stress response. The mere act of just thinking about someone you love and care about, thinking about a memory of an experience that felt really good to you can begin to generate oxytocin. So a lot of mindfulness meditation practices, especially what we refer to as the compassion practices, generate that neurohormone, oxytocin. The more of it we can generate on a daily basis, the better. It's good for me because it doesn't drain and deplete my system. It shifts me out of stress response. So now I can meet up with whatever stress is here. I can have full access to all those parts of my brain, and I can stay connected to myself and to those people who are around me. We say that oxytocin is the hormone of connection. It's the hormone of social support. When we are in an acutely stressful situation, an emergency, you'll notice two things happening. You'll notice, I'm ready to fight for this person. I'm ready to run. I may have to freeze and shut down in order to protect myself. And if I need to, I will extend a hand to help pull someone out of a ditch. I will extend a hand to help by donating money. I will extend a hand to hope, to help someone who is in need. That extension during acute stress is oxytocin. So it's really an important hormone, both in helping us to meet stress mindfully and productively, and in actually helping us out during acutely stressful situations. So I want to close out today by leading you through a practice, and this practice is designed, its intention is to relax you to the point where you start producing that oxytocin. It's generally relaxing, period. And I want to pair the practice with 3 really intentional breaths. It's actually how we're going to come into the meditation. And I'm going to cue you into lengthening your exhalation. So you'll be taking a deep breath in, and as you exhale, I want you to lengthen the exhale so it's longer than the inhale. Neurologically, what we know about that strategy is a longer exhale starts to settle the central nervous system. So again, it's a wonderful, quick strategy to take yourself out of stress response. You can be anywhere, doing anything. Focus in on making your exhale slightly longer. So I think that most of us have our cameras off, and so guiding you through this, having the camera on or off is completely optional for you. I know that when I do something like this, a lot of individuals like to have the camera off so that it feels more private and interior. And the best part is it doesn't take very long. So, I want to invite you to experience this in a seated position, or even if you want to lay down, if you feel like you need a little bit of additional rest, it's perfectly fine. And if you are seated, I want to invite you to sit with your feet flat on the floor, hip width apart. I want you to sit comfortably, but with your spines a little bit straighter, yet relaxed. And I want to invite you to close your eyes. And if closing your eyes doesn't feel comfortable, the recommendation is that you keep your gaze very soft, that you look forward and slightly down. And we're going to get started. So I want you to take a deep breath in, so much so that it just feels exaggerated. So you really feel the air coming in and the expansion of the chest. And now exhale, and as you exhale that air out, make it longer. So there's a sense that you're dropping down into your own body. And now again, take a deep breath in. And as you exhale, allow it to be slightly longer, as if you're dropping down, down, down. And one more time, taking a deep breath in, and as you exhale, lengthen that exhalation, settling down and into your own body. And now just allow the breath to be just as it is. And if you know that you need a little more settling, if you've had a rough start of your day, go ahead and continue to lengthen the exhalations. And regardless of your position, I want to first bring your awareness to your spine, to the back of the body. Just noticing the sensation of whatever the back of the body is up against. And spending a few moments really being aware of the upright, strong nature of your own spine. And the spine as a significant centering force in your own body. And now gently guide your awareness to your feet. If you're lying down, just notice the sensation of your own feet and maybe touch into the weight and the strength of your feet. And if you're seated, same thing. Noticing the strength of your feet, the weight of your feet, anchoring, grounding against the floor. So we are calm and centered through the spine, and we're nicely anchored and grounded through the feet. And gently guide your awareness now to your shoulders. Relaxing your shoulders down and just bringing them back just a little bit. And just that small movement creates a beautiful expansion through that chest. This is where a lot of our anxiety lives and lands. And this is where that oxytocin gets generated. So you might begin to feel a softening through the chest. And even the heart. And so no matter what's going on, when there's chaos all around us, we have the capacity to stay centered in the storm, through the spine, to stay grounded and anchored through the feet, and to stay open and connected to ourselves and others. And this is the centering practice. And gently guide your awareness back to your breath. And whenever you're ready, open your eyes, allowing the light back in. Just a quick summary. We centered through the spine by just straightening up a bit, grounded and anchored through those feet, relaxed through the chest. Just in a couple of minutes can really help to shift you out of that stress response. You can do that for as long or as short as you like. So before we depart, I want you to know that over the course of the next few weeks, in your 30-minute sessions, the first one is mindfulness of breathing. The second is called the 3 grounds of support. And the third is called the body, heart, mind check-in. And when you come into the portal, I want to strongly recommend the grounding meditation that you can find in the meditation section. That's actually led by me. And one called the calming meditation with one of our instructors, Rachel. And you'll see meditation, guided meditation 1 and 2. There's all kinds of stuff in those buckets, as well as some amazing movement practices. And the chair practice with our teacher, Rachel, the chair yoga, can be really helpful, whether you're at home video conferencing or you're in the space of the office. So is it Jane or Janelle? Jane and Angie, are you still with us?
Oh, it's Janelle, yeah.
Janelle, how do you feel?
Feel a lot more relaxed.
Good. How about you, Angie?
Yeah, I feel the same.
Excellent. Well, I'm so glad that you stayed on. Was there anything else, or did you have any questions for me based on all of that? I know it was a lot.
No, this was helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, it's very helpful.
Good. It'll be followed up with a resource guide, that will give you some additional sources that you can look at. And again, enjoy your time with our other teacher, Jennifer O'Sullivan, and enjoy your time in the portal. Use it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.